Global Times, 19th of October 2022, the US's push for decoupling risks China's security. DC, can you see it? While globalization was one of the ways and benefits the US gave to the USSR to help it stand up, Communist China is now the enemy. As the US continues trying to decouple from China, more and more other countries also realize they need to do the same. And this might affect China. Washington is doing the right thing by decoupling from China to further its goals. And the US's allies and partners seem to have understood better than the US itself how important decoupling is in the long run. Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, said that decoupling is the wrong answer because it would hurt the growth of globalization. He said at a business meeting in Berlin last week, "We must keep doing business with China." People who work with the US in the Indo-Pacific area have also issued similar warnings. On Tuesday, Lee Hsien Loong, the Prime Minister of Singapore, said that decoupling from China is a cause for concern. The US's latest decoupling effort, limiting chip equipment exports to Beijing, would trigger further consequences and may result in less economic cooperation, less interdependency, less trust and possibly ultimately a less stable world, Lee said. Many countries and areas in the Asia-Pacific could quickly agree with what Lee said. When China and the US work together, it suits these countries and places. When they fight, it isn't good. These people don't like the US and China decoupling idea because it's never been good news for them. A Chinese international relations expert who did not want to be named told the Global Times that it is hard for the US and China to quickly decouple because of their strong economic ties and the need to work together to solve many global problems. It would take a few years to do this. Decoupling has already been turned into a tool and a political issue by Washington. It will keep trying to force decoupling from China, which is bad for both countries and will tense ties between them. The decoupling between the US and China is not just a disagreement between the two countries. China and the US have one of the most essential two-way relationships because they are both big powers. Any minor changes in these relationships will likely cause instability on a much bigger scale and in more places. The harmful effects of a decoupling between the US and China are much worse than the effect on their relationship. For example, the fact that Washington is decoupling from Beijing is perfect for the area and the world. There are many times when the US talks about working with partners with shared values, but China is not one of those partners. As a result, the US wants Western countries to lean less on countries that don't share their values, like China and Russia. This means that Western countries should choose their economic partners based on their beliefs. This will make it harder for governments to do business with each other and share goods and services typically. This will lead to more mistrust and maybe even wars between nations. From the point of view of the industry chain, the world economy will grow more quickly if the US does end its decoupling from China. Song Dongping, a Chinese military expert and TV commentator, says that the trade and economic relationship between Beijing and Washington is integral to global economic integration. This is because it helps make goods and services more affordable by dividing work among different countries and regions in the best way possible. Song said that changing the economic relationship between China and the US would also hurt other countries since the global industry chain already has a way of dividing up work. As for decoupling, the production process will be positive if the US breaks up the whole industrial chain against its will. The aim of decoupling between the US and China has led to peace in many areas, including security. When there is a decoupling, the economic and trade ties between Beijing and Washington will weaken or break down completely. This will make it easier for the two powers to fight each other. Because of this, the world will have more significant security problems and disagreements between people. The growth of ties between China and the US has shown that countries can live and grow together despite being very different in many areas. But China has lost its sense of what's right in its global game against the US. This has made the two countries' already sensitive and unstable relations even less stable. It is clear to Washington that decoupling from China is integral to its game. The US is wary of using big economic decisions as a weapon in a full-on strategic battle with China. If China deals sensibly and practically with its relationship with the US, the world will be safer.